They will break every single bone in your body. Bitch. Karlissa reacts to Chrisean signing her boxing deal. Karlissa.
Nobody saw this coming, and that's exactly why it hit like a wrecking ball wrapped in boxing gloves. 1 minute Chrisean is trending for chaos, controversies, and unpredictable outbursts. And the next minute she's allegedly signing a boxing deal like she's about to walk into a Rocky montage sponsored by bad decisions. But just when the internet thought it was getting an underdog comeback story, Karlissa showed up like the final boss nobody ordered and said the quiet part out loud. Not encouragement, not pride. Not even concern wrapped in love, straight doom. They'll break every bone. That wasn't a metaphor. That wasn't a joke. That sounded like a prophecy written in capital letters and posted with 0 emojis. This whole situation makes the Kardashians look like they're arguing over oat milk flavors. Because when family members start predicting orthopedic disasters on the internet, you know something deeper is boiling. The boxing deal announcement didn't land like inspiration. It landed like a warning label. Fans didn't hear opportunity. They heard liability. And Karlissa didn't react like a supportive parent watching growth. She reacted like someone who's seen this movie before and knows it ends with a stretcher and a trending hashtag. Something about this deal feels rushed, loud, and suspiciously chaotic. Like a secret got leaked before the ink dried. And once Karlissa spoke, the internet didn't just lean in, it froze. Because when someone that close starts saying things that dark, it stops being entertainment and starts feeling like foreshadowing. The moment the boxing deal rumor turned into a confirmed headline, the internet reacted the way it always does when chaos puts on gloves. Half the timeline celebrated like Chrisean had just announced a Grammy run, while the other half squinted at the screen like they were watching someone volunteer to jump into traffic for content. This wasn't a casual gym flex or a training our coming soon teaser. This was a real deal, real opponents, real punches, and real consequences that don't disappear when the cameras stop rolling. Boxing isn't reality TV. And it doesn't edit out pain. That's what made the announcement feel less like inspiration and more like a countdown clock quietly starting in the background. Chrisean's brand has always been built on unpredictability, raw emotion, and a level of fearlessness that borders on reckless. That energy works online because chaos goes viral and consequences stay theoretical. In a boxing ring, consequences are physical, immediate, and unforgiving. The sport doesn't care about clout, trending audios, or who dominated last week's algorithm. It only cares about timing, technique, conditioning, and what happens when someone who actually trained for years decides to test you. That's why so many people felt uneasy celebrating this move, even while pretending it was empowerment wrapped in boxing tape. At first, the rollout looked polished enough to distract casual viewers. Confident captions, dramatic photos, and language about discipline and focus flooded social media. It felt like the beginning of a redemption arc straight out of a streaming documentary pitch deck. But the deeper people looked, the more questions surfaced. Where was the long-term training footage? Who was the coaching team? How fast did this deal come together? Boxing careers aren't microwaved, and when something moves too fast, it usually means someone's prioritizing spectacle over safety. That unease spread quietly, like a rumor nobody wanted to start but everyone felt. Then Karlissa spoke, and the entire tone collapsed in on itself. No motivational speech, no cautious optimism. No, I just want her to be safe soundbite. She went straight to the point with the kind of blunt honesty that makes people uncomfortable because it cuts th. Rough the performance, they'll break every bone. That sentence didn't sound like exaggeration meant for clicks. It sounded like frustration mixed with experience. Like someone watching a slow motion crash and realizing nobody's hitting the brakes. In one moment, the boxing deal stopped feeling like a dream and started sounding like a warning label written in bold. Karlissa's reaction hit harder because of who she is in this story. She isn't a commentator reacting from the sidelines. She's someone deeply embedded in the chaos, someone who's seen the cycles, the decisions, the fallout, and the cleanup nobody posts about. When outsiders criticize Chrisean, it's easy to dismiss them as haters or clout chasers. When someone that close predicts injury instead of victory, it forces people to reconsider the narrative they were cheering for seconds earlier. Her words didn't feel reactionary. They felt preventative, like a last-ditch attempt to shake people awake. Immediately, fans started rewinding the clip, analyzing Karlissa's tone like it was a leaked interrogation tape. Was she angry at the deal itself, or the people behind it? Was she reacting to boxing as a sport, or to Chrisean specifically being placed into it? The lack of explanation made it more unsettling. She didn't elaborate, didn't soften the message, didn't follow up with reassurance. She said what she said and let it sit there, heavy and unresolved. That silence afterwards spoke louder than any rant ever could. As Karlissa's words spread, the excitement around the deal visibly shifted. Comment sections that had been full of fire emojis turned into debates about training, safety, and exploitation. People started asking whether Chrisean was being protected or positioned. In influencer boxing, the line between opportunity and exploitation is razor thin, and history isn't exactly comforting. Too many times, big personalities with limited preparation get thrown into rings because chaos sells tickets and injuries still trend. That context made Karlissa's reaction feel less dramatic and more responsible. What made this moment explosive wasn't just the warning itself, but how much it contrasted with the polished optimism surrounding the deal. Promoters sell dreams, but family members live with consequences. Karlissa wasn't talking about headlines or highlight reels. She was talking about bodies, bones, and damage that doesn't heal with an apology post. That grounded the situation in reality faster than any boxing analyst ever could. It reminded viewers that this wasn't a storyline playing out on a screen. It was a real person stepping into a sport designed to break down opponents systematically. By the time the first wave of reaction settled, one thing was clear. The boxing deal had stopped being just about Chrisean Rock chasing a new chapter. It had become a question of whether the people around her were prioritizing longevity over virality. Karlissa's words lingered like foreshadowing, the kind that makes audiences uncomfortable because it feels too specific to ignore. The scandal wasn't just that Chrisean signed a boxing deal. The scandal was that someone close enough to know the risks wasn't celebrating at all, and instead sounded like she was bracing for impact. Once Karlissa's warning escaped its original clip and started living its own life online, the situation stopped being a private concern and turned into a full-scale digital wildfire. The internet didn't just react, it spiraled. Every platform picked a side, and none of them were quiet about it. Some people clung to the idea that this was Chrisean Rock's glow-up era, a gritty comeback story where discipline magically replaces chaos. Others heard Karlissa's words echoing in their heads and couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching a setup unfold in real time. That tension turned the boxing deal into a cultural debate instead of a career move. Memes hit first because that's how discomfort gets processed online. Side-by-side photos compared professional boxers with stone-cold stares to screenshots of Chrisean mid-rant, mid-chaos, mid-viral meltdown. The captions weren't kind, but they weren't random either. People joked about main character energy, meeting professional consequences, about heart not being a substitute for head movement. It was humor with teeth, the kind that laughs while nervously glancing over its shoulder because it knows it might be right. Every meme carried the same subtext: this feels reckless. And we've seen how this ends. Celebrities started reacting, and the silence was louder than the noise. A few offered vague encouragement, the kind that reads like a PR obligation rather than genuine belief. Others avoided the topic completely, which in internet culture is practically a confession. Because when people who comment on everything suddenly have nothing to say, it usually means they don't want to be on record when things go left. That quiet skepticism fed the growing unease, making Karlissa's warning feel less like an outburst and more like the only honest reaction in the room. Boxing insiders didn't bother with niceties. Trainers, former fighters, and analysts began breaking down what it actually takes to survive in the ring, and none of it aligned with a rushed influencer rollout. They talked about muscle memory built over years, not weeks, about conditioning that keeps your hands up when your lungs are on fire, about the difference between being tough in the streets and being technical under lights. These weren't personal attacks. They were reality checks, and each one chipped away at the fantasy being sold. Pop culture comparisons exploded because people needed language to describe what they were watching. Some said this felt like a reality show plot twist written by someone who hates the main character. Others compared it to those viral documentaries where the ending is obvious from the first 10 minutes, but everyone pretends it isn't until the credits roll. The Rocky narrative got laughed out of the room and replaced with darker references, the kind that come with cautionary music and ominous voiceovers. This wasn't underdog energy. This was foreshadowing. Karlissa's quote became the center of it all, replayed and remixed until it felt prophetic. People started asking why she sounded so certain, not worried, certain. That distinction mattered. It suggested she wasn't reacting emotionally but speaking from experience, like someone who's seen how quickly hype turns into harm. Fans dissected her history, her past comments, her relationship to the chaos, trying to piece together what she might know that the public doesn't. The absence of clarification only made it worse. In a world where everyone overexplains, her refusal to soften the message made it feel deliberate. Public outrage followed, not just at the deal but at the system behind it. People questioned the ethics of influencer boxing as a whole, calling it a spectacle that profits off inexperience and ego. They pointed out how often women get pushed into these situations under the banner of empowerment, only to be discarded when the damage is done. The conversation shifted from Chrisean as an individual to a broader critique of an industry that thrives on chaos and calls it opportunity. Karlissa's warning became a symbol of that critique. As the discourse grew louder, the official messaging stayed frustratingly vague. No detailed breakdown of preparation, no reassurance from credible trainers, no timeline that suggested patience, just confidence, bravado, and the assumption that belief would fill the gaps where training should be. That disconnect fueled suspicion, because in combat sports, confidence without preparation isn't inspiring, it's dangerous. And the lack of transparency made people wonder who exactly this deal was really for. What made this chapter feel especially volatile was how fast public opinion swung. One day, the deal was being celebrated as bold and fearless. The next, it was being questioned as reckless and exploitative. That kind of whiplash doesn't happen without a trigger. And Karlissa's reaction was exactly that. Her words cut through the noise and forced people to confront the uncomfortable reality beneath the hype. It wasn't about doubting Chrisean's heart. It was about doubting the situation she was being placed into. By the end of this phase, the boxing deal had evolved into something much bigger than a career move. It had become a mirror reflecting the internet's obsession with spectacle over safety. Karlissa's warning hovered over every discussion like a dark cloud, impossible to ignore and impossible to dismiss. The memes kept coming, the debates kept raging, and the unease kept growing. Because beneath all the jokes and takes, one question refused to go away. Was this about to become another viral moment people would regret laughing at by the time the noise reached its peak? The boxing deal no longer felt like an announcement. It felt like a turning point with consequences already baked in. The laughter thinned out, the memes flowed, and what replaced them was something heavier, reflection. Because once the internet finishes joking, it usually starts preparing its "we tried to warn you" speeches. Karlissa's words aged fast. Not because something happened yet, but because they kept making sense the longer people sat with them. They'll break. Every bone stopped sounding extreme and started sounding inevitable in a culture that never slows down long enough to protect its stars. Chrisean Rock's public image began shifting in subtle but unmistakable ways. Where she was once framed as chaotic but resilient, the narrative tilted toward vulnerable but surrounded. Fans who used to cheer every impulsive move started asking whether she was being guided or pushed. That question alone marked a major shift. When audiences stopped trusting the process, they stopped trusting the outcome. The boxing deal didn't just put Chrisean's physical safety under scrutiny. It put her entire support system on trial in the court of public opinion. Karlissa, meanwhile, became an uncomfortable focal point. Some accused her of being negative, unsupportive, or dramatic. Others quietly admitted she might be the only one telling the truth. That split mirrored the larger divide in how people view accountability versus loyalty. Is support always clapping, or is it sometimes saying things nobody wants to hear? Karlissa didn't soften her stance, and that consistency made her warning linger longer than any apology tour ever could. She didn't chase validation. She stood on what she said and let time do the talking as discussions evolved. The long-term implications of this move became harder to ignore. Boxing doesn't just affect careers, it affects bodies, reputations, and future opportunities. One bad night in the ring can overshadow years of branding. A visible injury can become a permanent association. The internet loves redemption arcs, but it's brutal to people who stumble in real time. If this deal goes wrong, there's no rewind button, no edit, no viral excuse that can undo the damage. That reality hovered over every optimistic post like a disclaimer nobody wanted to read. The relationships around Chrisean also came under scrutiny. Fans questioned who was advising her, who was signing off on decisions, and who stood to benefit the most if things went viral for the wrong reasons. Every manager, promoter, and collaborator became part of the conversation. Silence from those figures didn't help. In fact, it made things worse. Because when accountability goes missing, suspicion fills the gap. Karlissa's warning made people wonder whether internal disagreements were being masked behind public confidence. Public perception doesn't flip overnight, but it does harden. And as days passed, the excitement around the boxing deal cooled into cautious observation. People stopped cheering and started watching, waiting. That shift is dangerous, because audiences waiting for something to go wrong tend to find confirmation even in small missteps. Every training clip, every statement, every absence became evidence for one side or the other. The pressure mounted quietly, building a narrative that felt less like hope and more like suspense. What made this chapter especially haunting was the sense that everyone knew this wasn't the end. Whether the outcome is triumph or disaster, the boxing deal guaranteed fallout. Success would invite even riskier opportunities. Failure would spark blame, finger-pointing, and revisionist history. Either way, the chaos wouldn't stop. It would just evolve. Karlissa's warning didn't close a chapter. It opened a door to a future filled with what-ifs and we told you so moments waiting to happen. In the background, the broader conversation about influencer boxing continued to grow louder. Critics pointed to this situation as another example of how spectacle often outweighs responsibility. Supporters argued that risk is part of growth, but even those defending the deal couldn't fully dismiss Karlissa's words. They lingered like a shadow behind every optimistic take, reminding everyone that courage doesn't cancel consequences. And in boxing, consequences are the entire point. As this phase settles, one thing is painfully clear. This story isn't about a contract or a ring. It's about how quickly the internet turns people into experiments, how fame accelerates decisions that should take time, and how warnings are often ignored because optimism is more entertaining. Karlissa didn't predict failure out of spite. She predicted damage out of familiarity with chaos. That distinction matters, even if people don't want to admit it yet. The real aftermath isn't visible yet, but it's coming. Whether it arrives in the form of triumph, injury, backlash, or silence remains to be seen. What's certain is that the moment Karlissa spoke, this deal stopped being just another headline. It became a test of whether anyone involved is willing to prioritize longevity over virality. And until that question is answered, her words will keep echoing, waiting for the moment the internet decides whether they were cruel exaggeration or uncomfortable truth. And this is exactly where the story stops being entertainment and starts becoming a warning wrapped in a headline. Because whether you think Karlissa was being dramatic or brutally honest, one thing is undeniable. She said what everyone else was scared to even hint at. While the internet was busy celebrating the optics, she was talking about outcomes. While promoters were selling dreams, she was talking about bones. That disconnect is the real scandal. And it's why this story isn't done yet, not even close. Now I want to hear from you. Was Karlissa out of line, or was she the only adult in the room? Is this boxing deal a powerful reinvention, or another viral setup waiting to crash and burn? Drop your take in the comments, because silence is exactly how bad decisions keep repeating themselves. And don't hold back. This is one of those debates where the truth lives in the tension. If this breakdown made you pause, question the narrative, or side-eye the hype, smash that like button like it owes you money. Hit subscribe like scandals drop faster than apologies, because over here, the chaos never clocks out. We don't just cover headlines, we expose the cracks underneath them every single time. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because stories like this don't fade quietly. They evolve, explode, and come back with updates nobody saw coming. When the fallout hits, when the narrative flips, when the "we tried to warn you" clips start circulating, you'll want to already be here. This is Fame Flaws, where viral moments get stripped of their filters and the truth always hits harder than the hype. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and remember, every glow-up looks shiny until the lights turn off.